Let things spool up here.
Mm-hmm.
Get the live stream on like it needs to be. All right, ladies and gents, welcome to the Edge Live Q&A. We do this every Friday. I'm Kylan Hurt. I'm a front-end developer for Edge Wallet, and today I'm joined by RJ, one of our customer support technicians, I guess you could say.
Yeah, right. Hey guys, welcome.
Yeah, it's been a pretty busy week in cryptocurrency. And first things first, I guess before we start, we should say for those of you who are watching on Facebook or on Periscope or on YouTube, we do take your questions and comments live. So if you want to interact with us, please feel free to throw something in the comments, and we will respond as quickly as we can and as best as we can. So I guess the first sort of news that we should cover is that Edge Wallet, we were present at the Crypto Investment Summit in LA, and you actually were there. You attended the event.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts on the summit?
It was pretty fun. It was popping. There was a lot of people there. Got to meet Crypto Boys, Wendy, Crypto Stash, Jason from Dragon Wolf Tech. It was a lot of fun. Got to meet a lot of new people, a lot of talks, a lot of good networking for Edge, potential investors, interest in adding coins and other Edge solutions. So it was pretty good. Not as big as Miami, but it could also be with the downward pressure on the price. So
Right.
So that could be one of the things. But yeah, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, you can't really expect everything to be as big as Miami. I feel like that's the big, in North America,
That's like the big one.
that's the big kahuna that everyone compares things to. But at this point, you have so many different cryptocurrency conferences that any given one, it's sort of diluted, right?
Right.
So what was the kind of the vibe like compared to previous years, would you say?
Not like Miami from the previous year, where we have a lot of ICO tokens and different kinds of coins just coming out left and right.
Right.
So that kind of died down, but there were still a few other new coins out there.
You know any off the top of your head or not really?
Not really, but
None,
there was
none of
one
them that
that
caught
kind
your
of did
attention?
ring a bell. Blockchain explorer from like trees or plants or something like that. How does that work? So,
Yeah, how does that work? I
Yeah.
don't know. That's all sorts of crazy stuff. That's good to hear. So that's I'm trying to think. You've been to how many conferences have you been to? You think in the last year?
I try to head out to maybe like 2 or 3 a year, but my very first one that I really enjoyed was the Vegas one in 2014. So that was my first Bitcoin conference.
Yeah, which one was
not
that?
I forgot the name of it, but it's a Las Vegas Bitcoin conference in
Okay.
2014.
Got it.
So that was not a lot of people. I would say maybe a few hundred, not a lot of booths.
The hardcores.
Yeah, we were just a directory.
We were just the Airbits directory.
Yep.
Yeah, we still get comments about that sometimes. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to a conference. I like going to conferences. I don't always like traveling too much, but I'm as a developer, it's a higher priority that I get things done, that I add features and fix bugs so that our users can actually have a good experience within our app.
Right.
Okay, so I think we should go through some of the news. Where should we start? Obviously, probably the biggest news this week with regards to transparency, I guess you could say, is Julian Assange. He has finally been arrested. He was staying in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and he'd been there for almost a decade.
Yeah,
Can you imagine?
Yeah, a little over 7 years.
He's cooped up. It sounds like an embassy that you think is some fancy thing, but apparently it's just like an apartment. And essentially, he's been stuck in there for almost a decade. And it's for whatever reason, things have finally gotten to the point where the UK police have stepped in and actually arrested him. The assumption is that he's going to be indicted on some sort of charges about something to do with data breaching, right? And
Right.
Specifically, it's going to be the American government that is going to take him on. And as soon as this happened, Wikileaks was one of the first realistic use cases for something like cryptocurrency, especially with regards to privacy, right? Because people
Right.
want to support something like WikiLeaks, but in order to support it, you can get blacklisted. You can end up on
Before they used to take PayPal,
And-
then they got
yeah.
blacklisted, and now people are donating Bitcoins back in 2011 or earlier.
right, and but when if you were to donate money to something like WikiLeaks, all of a sudden you become an enemy of the state, right? If the government that you live under doesn't like WikiLeaks, then you're a friend of the enemy, essentially.
Right.
So cryptocurrency made sense as a use case for being able to contribute money to something like WikiLeaks. So I guess with this case this week, they As soon as WikiLeaks announced that Assange was arrested, as soon as he was arrested, WikiLeaks had raised something like $20,000 in Bitcoin. Yeah. So it is nice to see that it's a use case where it is actually working. 20,000 is not too much, but I think as there's more news, hopefully more and more people will donate. Right. I mean, I'll go ahead and say it out loud. I am a supporter of WikiLeaks for the most part. I like what they do.
Right. I just find it weird where, you take a look at Facebook where they resell your personal data,
right?
And he's hailed by corporations and whatnot. But
right.
when it comes from someone like Julian Assange, where he's exposing corruption, then it's the other way around.
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to think what other stuff there was where they're talking about. Jesse Smollett. You know how that controversy, the fake race attack recently. People were saying it's funny because he lies and he gets off scot-free. Julian Assange tells the truth and he's facing who knows what sort of prison time, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the world that we're living in. 7 years in embassy is kind of crazy. Now,
and then not only that, I was looking at some posts. There was some comparisons. You know how a lot of the WikiLeaks stuff was, giving out dirt like on Clinton during the campaign for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump praised them.
Oh,
and then
right.
I think it was this morning or the other day. It's like I don't know nothing about.
Yeah, I don't know anything
WikiLeaks.
about this WikiLeaks.
When you were praising it, during the entirety of your campaign, is just mind-boggling.
You can tell he's being coached, right? Either that or he's just terrible memory. I'm not really sure, but yeah, WikiLeaks was a great friend during the campaign when he wanted, when they were sharing data about Clinton,
if it's in your favor, right?
About his opponent. But when things turn around, obviously his tone changes. Yeah, I mean that's politics, right? And that's the nature of it. I think it will be interesting to see, without getting too political. It'll be interesting to see exactly how Trump takes on this one. I have a feeling he's just going to keep his distance and say whatever, right? He's going to let the federal courts do what they want, which just goes to show, even if you're president, even if you wanted to support Julian Assange, there's enough people there putting enough pressure to make sure that he does not do something like that.
Right.
That's kind of how the meat is made, right? So I remember you were mentioning something about a dead switch for Julian Assange.
I believe he had a dead man switch where it released additional files, but I don't remember if it actually did take place because I remember back a few years ago that his internet did get cut off. So I don't know if the files were released, or if it did, maybe he still has some backup files that, since he's been arrested, those files, new files would get arrested, sent out. That is.
Yeah, I wonder how he's been communicating with the outside world. If he's been, if you don't have the internet, are you what? How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So
I don't know. I mean, when you're however many years in an embassy, cooped up in a little room, at some point you probably just want some sort of closure. So it's like, okay, if you're gonna arrest me, just go ahead and arrest me.
Right.
But we'll see how that goes. So let's see what else we got here. Oh, this one I actually kind of like. Have you been following this BSV Craig Wright stuff?
Yeah.
So you want to give the audience a little bit of a...
Yeah, there was a tweet out, I think it was earlier today or yesterday, that Binance are tired of Craig Wright and they might even delist.
BSV, just because they don't like the creator.
Yeah, so I'm wondering where that goes. Is this a taunt or will they actually go through with it?
Yeah, I guess when you're a private company, you can do something like that. I know one of the things I've been seeing this week is that, for those of you who don't know, Craig Wright is the kind of mastermind, if you could say that, behind Bitcoin Satoshi's vision, which is BSV, and he at many points has claimed that he is Satoshi Nakamoto. The consensus seems to be that he's not, that he's essentially a fraud and a liar. But whether or not that has any bearing on the viability of Bitcoin SV is another question. But man, they've been going around this week, and they've been throwing around threats of lawsuits for people essentially saying stuff that Craig Wright doesn't like.
Right.
And so this is something where the crypto Twitter feuds are kind of getting out of hand, kind of the uglier side of cryptocurrency. But people seem to like this sort of drama to a certain extent.
Yeah, they just like to stir things up. It gets a lot of attention.
Yeah. So it sounds like, what's his name? CZ at Binance is a little fed up.
Yep.
So they might delist BSV. So who knows?
Right.
Who knows how that goes? What else we got here?
So next one, I thought this was an interesting question. We get these questions a lot, or sometimes I see this in the forum, like how can Bitcoin go mainstream if you have to wait 20 minutes or an hour, 2 hours to buy your coffee for a confirmation?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's actually possible. So, for example, there's BIC in Japan, which is a big electronics retailer,
okay.
and they posted that they're taking zero confirmation payments for
Right.
Bitcoin for for electronics, even with discounts. So one would ask, what if they double spend, or what if they spend it somewhere else?
Right.
And like I go in there, buy a laptop, and use zero fees for the transaction,
Right.
get my Bitcoin back. But from what I've read, they might use something like CPFP or child pays for protection, parent transactions, and that's where as soon as they receive the money, even though it's with low fees or a zero fee, they send it back to themselves with a higher fee, so that transaction doesn't drop. And that's something that could be
Oh.
automated. So that
Yeah.
gives the customers, they don't have to pay any fees, and then the store, they're the one that
They'll
handles
still
the
have to
fees.
pay a fee, but it can be a smaller fee, right?
Right. As long as it's a higher fee than what the customers
Right.
meant.
Well, look, obviously this can get a little out of hand if you're doing on-chain transactions, normal Bitcoin transactions.
Mhm.
Then if you're always if fees get high enough, then the vendor, the merchant, will have to pay a lot in fees in order to make sure.
Which could be $50 fees
Right.
if we see the spikes again.
Right. But the flip side is you could also, if you're a vendor, if the fees just get too high, you just turn it off. You say, the fees are above $5. Just tell them that they have to pay with normal Visa, right?
Yeah, let's change it up.
But on the other hand, that is obviously a challenge, right? It goes to show the shortcomings of cryptocurrency to a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are getting fed up with the traditional payment processors as well. I've been hearing that PayPal, I think, is increasing their fees now to include not just a fixed percentage, but also
Interesting.
it should be not just a fixed fee, but also a percentage, something like that.
Right.
Which becomes an issue because and I think they don't get refunds back on it. So if there's a charge back, the fee that had to get paid doesn't get returned. So anyways, there's obviously Bitcoin has its issues, but so does PayPal, and so do the other payment processors. Once you start getting into Bitcoin, you start realizing that all the payment processors are just, a lot of people are very unhappy with them.
Right. Speaking of which aligns with what we're going to talk about next, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, did a little
Right.
poll on what are the popular payments to be used by 2024, and there was 38,000 votes, and surprisingly, 56% voted for crypto, while compared to bank credit type cards, 9%. So it kind of shows you that people are kind of tired with the bank cards.
Yeah, no, I think so. So I'm kind of curious, what do you think, what by 2024 you said? 2025?
2024.
2024.
Yep.
How do you see it working? How's Bitcoin,
So
how's crypto going to scale?
I don't know how it's going to scale. It could be a Lightning Network, could be another altcoin that's a lot faster.
Right.
Maybe Bitcoin resolves its own thing, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously on-chain scaling is one thing, Lightning Network is another. But when I think about it, it's kind of different use cases, right? Because Lightning Network would be more handy if you're doing small transactions. You get a really low fee, so the fee is a small percentage of the transaction. The immediate thing that comes to mind is micropayments. Something like Bitcoin Cash could work for normal payments, where I'm sending you $50, something like that, where I don't mind paying like a cent or 5-cent fee, right? Because it's lower than traditional payment processors. So I think there are definitely there are several solutions out there, and who knows, the one that wins might not even be invented yet, or there might not be one that
Still
wins.
yet to be invented.
Maybe there's just different types of use cases which will have different currencies, which is kind of what I've envisioned for a while. Of course, that gets confusing because if you have a bunch of use cases, then our users going to have to keep track of which use case is best with which currency.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a lot of switching around to different currencies or coins. It's not one go-to place.
Right. So imagine
harder.
Imagine you're using Bitcoin. You think the fees are still really low, and I don't pay attention to the fees. I send you $1,000, expecting it to be 50-cent fee, but then by then the blocks are really full. They haven't increased the block size, so on-chain transactions are maybe something like say $50.
Yeah.
$50, which is not unheard of. The Bitcoin core developers will tell you that's kind of how they envision it.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, you've paid someone $1,000 and it's a $50 fee. That could be a pretty bad user experience, couldn't it?
Yeah, and it could be higher depending on the number of inputs in the transaction.
Yeah, I do wonder with on-chain scaling though. I mean, can you really reach PayPal or Visa levels? If you're doing 32 megabyte blocks, okay, then you need to scan the blockchain, but the blockchain is really big. There's all sorts of issues. I don't see any clear winner. Even with things like EOS, they're talking about how there's these block producers only have so much RAM, so if you can have a super server, but if it can only fit so much RAM, eventually you get maxed out.
Yeah, so another bottleneck there.
There's no end to the amount of resources that the networks want. They want as many resources as possible, so you max out those resource usage pretty quickly. I mean, one of the main ways to throttle that, of course, is to increase the price of the usage of that network. So there's no easy solution at this point. Let's see what else we got. Oh, so do you use a Shift card at all or BitPay?
No, I've never used any of those crypto credit cards, but
Right.
there is an interesting topic with Coinbase partnering up.
Yeah, I know all about this one
Yeah.
because so there's a payment processor that works with Visa. It's called Shift, and Coinbase partnered up with them a few years ago, and they offered Coinbase users the ability to connect their Bitcoin accounts to a Visa debit card.
Mm-hmm.
So if anywhere that takes Visa, you just use your Shift card like a regular debit card, and it takes out the appropriate amount of Bitcoin from your Coinbase account, from your Coinbase wallet. Which, okay, maybe it's not how people envision cryptocurrency being used, right? Because you're still switching into fiat and you're still using Visa, but it's still pretty convenient. I could keep things in my Coinbase account and just use it like a regular debit card. And about like a couple of months ago, they announced that they were discontinuing it, and I was actually really pissed. I was like, I don't know why they're discontinuing it. It was pretty mad because that means that I would only be able to use my Wells Fargo Visa card, and you need some sort of Visa card realistically in the modern world.
Right.
But it turns out that they, meaning Coinbase, is partnering up with Visa directly, so they're getting rid of the middleman, and maybe that's why the Shift card was canceled. So they are rolling out this Visa Coinbase card in the UK, and I think maybe in Europe, and I don't think they're doing it in the United States yet. I don't know why, probably stricter regulations. What are your thoughts in general of cards linked to a Coinbase account or a BitPay account? Does that push adoption forward, or is that...
It helps a little bit, but I think there's a better way, and which is what we're kind of doing with
Right.
Simplex Sell. So the normal way is, or the way most people do it is, there's a crypto card, you send Bitcoins, you load it up, then you use this crypto card that's, tied with your Bitcoin.
Right.
Right. The way we have it with Simplex, which we're going to introduce in the next update, hopefully, is where you can sell your Bitcoins and then you pay off your credit card instead. So you can continue using whatever credit card that you have.
Right.
And if you got to make payments on your credit card, you sell your Bitcoins, and through Simplex, they'll pay off that balance, whatever it is, that amount that you end up selling. So it's a little bit different.
So
kind of like the
similar.
opposite.
Yeah. So is that something that Edge is planning on implementing?
Yeah.
That's on the roadmap?
It's on the roadmap.
Yeah, we got a bunch of stuff we're doing with Simplex and some of the other plugins, trying to give you more functionality with regards to buying and selling cryptocurrency and actually using cryptocurrency. 2017 was all about holding on and hodling your crypto. Now I think we're at the point where we need to actually start figuring out the real use cases, getting it in people's hands so that they can actually use it, right?
Right. And speaking of getting it in people's hands, you got to be careful when you go into the exchanges. Make sure you use, something that does KYC, because the feds don't really like, exchanges that are not licensed. I mean, we read up on the news about...
Yeah, I read up, I saw, this was actually a San Diego resident who was buying and selling cryptocurrency. I think they were going over the border back and forth, essentially operating as an unlicensed exchange using local Bitcoins. And this person eventually was part of a sting. They got stung. They got caught. And I think they had transacted somewhere around $3 million worth.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they were using a Hong Kong-based exchange, probably with a VPN, something like that. It eventually gets tracked to them. This person was doing it probably over the course of a couple years. They had transacted $3 million, probably made about, I think, what they say, 5%.
5% above spot rate.
Above spot rate, so maybe 150K profit. When I hear that, I mean, that's a lot of work and a lot of
for a lot of risk.
A lot of risk for maybe not that much money, but it's a lot of money to some people though. So yeah, so this person got caught, and of that, what was it? How much was it? Maybe it was more than 150K.
There was like close to $1 million. There was actually,
they're asking for $800,000 in illicit profits, which. Okay, so maybe the amount of 3.29 million purchase. So that's a huge number. I mean, if that's even first of all, I don't know if he made that much money, but even if he did, there's no way he has all that money.
Right.
So this person is already facing a couple of years in prison. They're young. I think they're like 20 years old, something like that. And yeah, they tried to escape the long arm of the law and ended up getting stung. So it's unfortunate, but it is a reminder for those of you out there that if you want to go around the system, there are risks. We're not here to recommend that you do or don't. Just know the risks. Take care of yourself.
Right, and it goes both ways, buying and selling. I think there's articles, like in Florida, user wanted to buy some Bitcoin, ended up being the Fed. So
Right. So they got stung as well, huh?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's see here. What else do we have? Visa.
Okay. Oh, we do have a little announcement that if you're still using Airbit's, Glidera's last day, if you do
There you
use
go.
them for buying and selling, their last day will be this Monday, April 15th. So if you're using them, start using maybe, we recommend Edge, use Wire or Simplex inside Edge to buy your Bitcoins. Eventually, we're going to get Sell in there too. So
Yeah, it
if you
should
have
be
an
happening relatively soon.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you do have an Airbit's account, it's a pretty simple transfer process. Just download Edge, log in with the same username and password. You'll see your account there.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's it for today. So just remember, we are here every Friday at noon Pacific time. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to throw them our way. We're Edge Wallet on Twitter, Edge on YouTube, and we're also on Facebook as well. We love hearing your questions and comments. We love interacting with you guys live as well on these broadcasts. So until next Friday, this is Kylan and RJ.
Yep.
Just remember, your keys, your coins.